All right, going live in 3, 2, 1. All right, let's get this process started. So guys, we're going to talk about how to crisis proof your agency. Give me 1 second to get the deck started over here. And so first thing that we're going to be talking about is really this. Make sure give me 1 second here to pause. All right, we're recording. So the first thing I want to drop into is this. This is a town hall about crisis proofing your agency in 2020. The world is a really uncertain place right now. And in all of the conversations that I've been having with agency owners over the last 2 weeks, some are having okay progress right now. A lot are struggling. So the thing that I want to know about is this. Before we dive in, what's been the hardest part about this crisis for you? Drop that into the chat, and then I'll pull it up just so that we can contextualize what we're going to be talking about and the best way for us to be able to help each other. So I'm going to be monitoring chat right now. Drop it in. What's been the hardest part about this crisis for you and your agency? Okay, so Jamie says clients pausing, revenue declining, pipeline drying up. Matt says projects going on hold. Fiona says forecasting. What does the next 3 to 12 months of work look like, including planning and resourcing accordingly? Fiona, you should chat with Stephanie on my team. She's my VP of operations. She's thinking about the exact same thing. David says, lack of clarity in the timing for how long this will last. How bad is it going to be and for how long? Yeah, totally. Those are all very valid concerns. Yeah, Jamie says, potential clients saying no to new business and leads pausing all new contracts, right? So those are the things that we're going to be focusing on for today's session. I want to make sure that I go through what I have to share with you. This is about our crisis response plan that we've been using at Powered by Search, and what I've been coaching other agency owners through the Agency Academy, coaching process as well. And I wanted to show you how you can use this as well. A few other things. Abdo says budget cuts, clients going bankrupt. I know, Abdo, you were messaging about collecting being an issue as well. Darko says client cutting budgets down. And then Raf says clients going quiet and fewer leads coming in. So let's kind of talk about where we're at. So this is March 2020 right now. And a few things we know are going to be true no matter how we respond to this crisis. So just by the simple passing of time, we're going to get to a 3-year progress down the road where we're in March 2023. I just want to show you a couple of different scenarios that might end up happening, from there. Now, I'm not a predictor of what's going to happen in the future at all. I'm not going to comment on the political or the health outcomes that will happen in the world because of this. But when it comes to business, what we know is that at some point in time, in that 3-year time span, we're going to have a recovery. And so that's 18 to 24 months out. Let's call that the survival line when it comes to where we're going to start seeing really things starting to pop back. I don't know if it's going to be business as usual, guys, but I think that we are going to get to a level of a new normal. And so that's the survival line, maybe 18 to 24 months out. And so there are 3 types of business leaders in the way that they may respond to this. So a friend of mine, Todd Herman, he's an executive coach. He interviewed 3 different types of CEOs, about like a group of 29, revenues ranging from 5 million a year to 500 million a year. And he saw sort of 3 key themes emerging that I want to share with you. The first is a group that he termed as fear focused, like in their responses, getting transcripts of the conversations that they were having, they were very clearly focused on, they're scared, like I'm sure many of us are right now. And so if we think about what those people are doing right now, they're panicking. And as a result of panicking, if you think about what line they're going to be on in terms of the growth and progress of their business, they're going to have drift end up happening. And the drift is happening because what they're doing is they're freezing everything. Like they're basically putting their head in the sand and going, I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to stop everything. I'm going to cut. I'm just going to try and put everything on pause and hold. Many of your clients are feeling this way right now. So those people are panicking. Then there's a second group that'll basically have the sine curve that ends up going on. And those people are in flight mode. So, fight, flight, or freeze, they're in flight mode right now. And as a result of being in flight mode, what we see is that they're unfocused. Those people are really focused on prepping. They're trying to bunker down and ride out the storm, not doing anything new, not, effectively cutting a lot. So they're not in complete full out panic mode. They're just like in a wait and see mode, not taking control of what they're doing. They're letting the market dictate what ends up happening to them. And then there's a third group, and these folks are basically, they're focused on fighting. And even though they're going to fight, they're not going to see a curve that goes way up to the right, a 45-degree angle. It's just not going to happen with where we're at right now. But they're the best poised because you could see it, that survival line. When that time happens, they start to, the curve accelerates and it moves up. And that's because they're fighting, and that's because they're strategy focused. And so in your own agency, we've had a week go by in late March 2020, which was an absolute shit show. And now we're in the second week. And really, I think there's a choice that business leaders like yourselves need to make, which is, which one of these lines do you want to be on? And if you think about it, there's a way to get there, and that's to really focus on your positioning and how you change the way that you pivot in terms of how you actually talk to the market right now. If you do it the same way you did a month or 2 months ago in January or February, it simply won't work. And those are the fact that it's not working is why a lot of people are freezing. One thing to consider about this whole process is that if you look at the three lines, green, yellow, and red, they're the closest that they'll ever be right now here in March 2020. And then as they accelerate away, they get a lot further. And if you notice, the red line guys, they're not even going to make it to the survival line. So the sad fact is a lot of agencies, I've seen some studies that show that between 15 to 25% of agencies won't even survive this crisis. They just won't have enough cash flow to weather the storm, and they'll go out of business. For the other two that remain, the ones who are the yellow and green line, you could start seeing that at the bottom of the yellow line, which is near that survival line point, it's still further away from that fight line, the green line, than it is right now. So the things that you can do right now are really about crisis response strategies that can really help you not only survive, but hopefully thrive as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. 3 key problems that we're going to be focusing on solving. This is based off what you've told me, what other agency owners have said, and what we're thinking about at Powered by Search right now as well. Clients pausing, a strategy for being able to deal with that. The second is leads slowing down. These are the things that you're exactly talking about in the chat right now. And then collecting money owed. And so if the taps really kind of rusted shut and clients are not returning your phone calls, they are being a little bit hard to get a hold of, they're very sort of frantic at this point in time, and you're starting to see your days of accounts receivable going up, then we're going to talk about a strategy basically for that as well. So is any of this helpful? Like if you think about those 3 things, like would it be helpful to dive in and have a conversation about that? If that's true, just drop in yes, just why in the chat, so I know that this is resonating with you guys. Oh wow, lots of reaction. Okay, David says yes to the first 2. Darko says yes, sir. Abdo says yes. Toby, Matt, Cami, Jamie. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, guys. And Fiona says that, and actually delaying is worse than pausing, because you're right, because you don't know when the work stoppage plan will come in place. And so you could be owed a lot of money only to find out that you'll never collect. And so you're on point about that, Fiona. She says exactly. Yeah, thanks. Let's talk about 3 reasons to act right now. And so instead of putting your head in the sand, what can you be doing right now? There are 3 reasons that I'm seeing at a macro kind of environment. The first reason is that your market is scared, meaning that this is not your competitors. These are your clients. And so whoever you're focusing on right now, if they're not, if they're not Netflix and they're not grocery delivery and they're not Zoom, your market is scared. And so they're looking for a way to frame their thinking about what's going on in the world right now. And so that creates a gap in the market on how you might be able to approach it. The second is, this is the one time in history, in modern history at least, you can literally be in the boardrooms or the Zoom calls of every one of your clients. You can read their minds because every single one of your clients and prospects is thinking the exact same thing. And they're probably thinking, how am I going to make this through? This is a shit show. How do I, make decisions about the growth of this business? how are we going to contend with some of the difficult decisions we need to make? Where do we make cuts? Where do we invest? And so you know exactly what they're thinking right now. And this has not happened. This is unprecedented. I was talking to a mentor of mine, and he said that the great generation was often the folks who survived World War II. And his assertion, this is a guy in his 60s, and he said, I think that the people who come through the other end of this crisis right now will be the new great generation. And part of that is that we can now, like, the whole world's thinking the same thing, basically, when it comes to at least the topic of business. And you can read their minds. And the third is that your clients are looking for leadership right now. Think about every single bogus email that you've received that had something to do with wash your hands, stay safe, and we are working remotely, or we're still open for business. That's the same parroted message that everybody is sharing right now. So how can you show up for your clients differently and showcase and demonstrate your leadership? That's what we're going to be focusing on. But this won't come easy. I want to talk to you about 3 mindset shifts that need to happen. So if you're trying to figure out where the silver lining in all of this is, there are 3 mindset shifts that need to happen, because I think all change first happens in between your ears, and then it starts into your hands, and then it comes out of your mouth into the market, right? That's the stuff that you talk, type, the projects that you put into the world right now as well. So the first mindset is to decide, not defer. And so Fiona, you were like completely on the right point about this, which is now is a time in this critical juncture to make decisions. Do you go this way or that way? And what do you do in your business? Do you bunker down and you prep? Do you basically pause everything because you're panicked and you're in fear? Or do you really position and change the way that you approach the market? The second is to rally, not to retreat. I was talking to a friend of mine who has a direct-to-consumer e-commerce business, and one of their co-founders is basically just checked out. Like, he's so overwhelmed by this whole thing that you can't even contact him. But that's not what we want right now. That's not how we need to show up. We need to not retreat. We need to rally our troops, the team, our clients, our community. That's why I'm doing this right now with you as well. There's nothing to buy. There's no pitch at the end of this in any way. It's simply to say, look, we're going to get through this together, better together than if we were fragmented and on our own. So let's rally, not retreat. And the third is to serve, not sell. There's a healthy amount of fear right now about, is this the right time to do marketing, to follow up with leads, to sell in any way possible, because we need to hit our numbers or we need to get new revenue and cash in. And our assertion is that no, it's the right time to serve, not to sell at all. It's the shift from building financial capital to building social capital. And I reckon that the people that you serve today are going to remember how you served them when we get out of this thing, and then they will become clients for life. Strongly believe that. And so let's dive in. I want to show you some thoughts on how to pivot, how to profit, and how to protect your revenue as well. So I'm just going to take a quick departure from these slides over here and switch to the iPad. So now would be a good time for you to jump into the your iPad or your tablet. And I'm just going to start sharing that in just a second over here. Okay, awesome. So give me a big yes in the chat, please, if you can see the screen. I want to make sure the tech is working okay. All right, everybody can see it. Great. So let's dive in. You're looking at the worksheets for crisis proofing your agency in 2020. First thing that I want to show you is this model called Protect, Pivot, and Profit. And this is the model upon which to kind of, if you want to share this with your team as well, it's going to be really, really important. So let's talk about a lot of what's going on in your market right now. A lot of your market is very fear focused right now. And they're not just fear focused, it's because they're consuming a lot of information. If you look at the news right now, there's not very much to write home about that's positive. And so a lot of it is because they are fear consumer. And so we need to make a shift over here in how we show up as agency owners and as agency teams to our clients. And so I reckon that instead of being a fear mongerer, which is what news networks and publishers, they can do their thing. That's how they make, their money. Let's be a certainty creator. So that is the shift and the opportunity to make over here. Rather than consuming a bunch of information, let's basically go from fear consumer to certainty creator. If you can do that for your clients right now, that is how you can survive and thrive through this whole thing. But there are 3 problems. Let's talk about the 3 problems that I know you're facing right now. The first one is that your clients are canceling. They're calling you up and saying, hey, we need to chat. Worst case, they're not even calling you. They're too afraid to talk to you, so they're just sending you an email. Well, that's tough. We got to figure out a way for pausing the cancellation conversation, right? Part of this is coming from the belief that I reckon that, they're doing it because they're in a fear state right now. They're freezing everything. But do you truly believe that whatever you do, whatever your set of agency services are, can help them get through this crisis? Just drop that in the chat. If you think that the thing you do right now, when a client calls and says, I want to put things on pause, can you help them get through this? Give me a yes or, yeah, 100% yes, hell yeah, absolutely, says Jamie, Raf, Fiona, awesome. So you guys know that you can help them and that it's not in their best interest for them to pause things out. A little bit of the conversation really is, do you really think that you could do better, Mr. and Miss Client, out there in the cold without us? When we've been behind we've had your back the entire way through, just because we have this crisis right now, it would be the right time to go out there in the cold and duke it out on your own. That's kind of the mindset that at least we're thinking about this through. So we need a way to be able to, respond to clients canceling and really pause that cancellation conversation. Yeah, Darko says maybe. Yeah, so you don't know if you can actually help them. No problem. We're going to talk through that. Daniel says, yes, with a new strategy, absolutely. And then Darko says, well, what if they're shut down? 100%. That's a real thing, man, at the end of the day. If you are servicing industries that just aren't able to operate right now, then here are 2 ways of thinking about that. One is they can't operate in the model that they already have, but can you help them think up a new model and how they can actually operate and serve their customers and clients in their community? So we'll talk about that in just a second, but we want to talk about how, we can prevent clients from canceling. The second thing that we want to do is solve this problem, which is cash flow falling. Some of you have offices and other expenses, labor being the biggest one, of course. Your expenses don't change when your revenue does, not unless you make them. Am I right about that, right? Who's worried a little bit about their cash flow right now? Drop that in the chat if that's one of the top of mind things for you. Fiona says, clients, senior teams who unlock budgets or focus on their own COVID response, not spending on their future. Darko says, yes, cash flow is dropping. David says 100% cash flow is the biggest issue. Jamie says, yes. So, okay, that's one of the problems that we need to solve for. And then for those of you who are worried about where pipeline is going, this is the third problem we need to solve, right? Pipeline, what's going on here? Pipeline starts stalling. And the very people who said that they were going to sign up with you, even 2 weeks before are now like, we're putting everything on hold. We just have to ride this thing out. So now let's think about a few strategies that, you can use to navigate the whole thing. The first thing we want to do is find a way to protect our revenue, right? That gives you the ability and the optionality to continue. The second thing we want to do is to pivot in the way that we sell and serve our clients. And the third thing that we want to do is find a way to get a pathway to being profitable, especially if you're not right now, right? Those are the three kind of shifts. That's why this is a protect, pivot, profit type of model. And what I want to do is enable you guys to think about this in probably 9 different ways. And so, let's think about a crisis response strategy over here. Divide this up into 3s. Zoom is being, or Notability is being a little bit hard for me to work with. Okay. So the first thing that we want to do, and if you haven't done this already, you need to connect with your clients. So just give me a C, just type in C if you've connected with every single one of your clients already. Yeah, David says C 2 weeks ago. Toby has, Cami has, Raf has, Daniel started, great. 90% says Matt, okay. So what we want to do is really connect with every single one of our clients, because if we don't know where their head's at, then you're setting yourself up to show them that you're working on your priorities, not on their priorities. Number 2, I think you set yourself up for being surprised. So we want to connect. Second thing that we want to do is we want to collect. That means that really having a response strategy to being able to take everything that's outstanding right now, everything that's at risk, and finding a way for collecting those dollars. So who's working right now on a collect strategy? Just type in collect if that's you. You'd be actively being pursuing. Yeah, Darko's working on collecting. Stephanie's collecting. Yes. So if you're thinking you're on the fence about this, because right now it might not be a good time to reach out because they're in crisis response themselves, then you might be missing the boat on this, because the longer those invoices go unpaid, the less likely that they ever will be, unless you've got a plan in place and you have communication protocols as well. And then the third thing we want to do from a pivoting strategy is what we want to do is we want to add some context. We want to contextualize the way that we're going to the market. When you get this right, you aren't messaging to the market with the same angles that you did, a month ago. You're coming out with a response strategy that is appropriate and that actually isn't tone deaf with the types of conversations that the market's already thinking about right now. So we want to think about a way to connect, collect, and then contextualize the way that you, protect your revenue, increase your profitability and cash flow, and then pivot the way that you come with your offers to the market. Is any of this helpful, by the way? Just a way to conceptualize or think about how to take the overwhelm down and get this into a process where you can do the next thing that's important in the agency? Okay, awesome. Very much so. Collecting, yes. This last one is something I'm struggling out to figure out, says David. Okay, cool. So if we're connecting, we need a way to know how to do that. Is anybody a little bit uncertain about the right kinds of words, what to say when you're reaching out to a client right now? If that's you, just put that in so that we know that we should focus on that. The second thing that we want to do in the protect part is we want to elevate value. Super duper important, because if you don't elevate the value and you're doing the same thing, you're just kind of connecting and saying, hey, how are you? But you have no way of protecting them and showing that you're able to increase the amount of value that you have in the market to your clients. Well, that's going to be a problem, I think, right? We also want a way so that we can pace expectations. Why is that important? Well, right now, your market is overwhelmed and they don't know what to expect. There's a lot of uncertainty. If you can increase their level of certainty and tell them what's going to happen based off what you're seeing in the market, and I want to make this really specific. If you are a PPC agency, think about the trends you're seeing, about search demand, about cost per click, about CPMs, about cost per action, about being able to talk to them about other clients and what they're doing. Any information that you can provide to a client right now about the right way to respond and what you're seeing is good information. No communication is a bad thing, because then the mind just fills in blanks about It tells itself whatever the story is. It looks for confirmation bias. So if they're fear focused right now, they're just going to consume more of that information, right? And they're going to be that fear consumer. On the collect side, look, I'm not going to not talk about the elephant in the room. You want to cut costs. But there's a way of going about that. Cut costs, not investments. And then the third thing that you want to do in terms of your own cash flow is defer how you're starting to get your payments and expenses. And no, this is not talking about labor. You don't want to negotiate with your best people and talk about how you might be able to defer payments to them. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about deferring your loans. I am talking about deferring your rent. I am talking about deferring things like that that are open to negotiation and that will actually strengthen the business even in boom times, not just in recessionary times. And so that's the process of deferring. Down here, in terms of pivoting, there are two things that I want you to focus on. One is really brainstorm what your offers are going to be. That means not the same old thing that you've always sold, but what is an appropriate offer for where we are at this point in time in the world. And often that means not selling your big thing. Like if you are I don't know, like $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in terms of engagement, maybe you're at 50 or 60 a year. Well, don't sell the $60,000 or $100,000 engagement. That's a lot to say yes to at this point in time. But what could you do a bit differently so that you give them a little morsel of value, something that is high impact for your clients and not it's low cost of goods sold for you, just so that they can start really being able to get the help quickly rather than having to make a decision, which is a yes/no decision. And if you really think about it, if you're pitching a large investment right now, are you more likely to get yeses or nos? Drop that in the chat. Yes or no? Yeah. Nope. Nope. No. Yeah, totally. That's exactly what I'm seeing as well. Like it would just not make very much sense. It's not aligned with where the market is right now. It's not about what they're thinking. The last thing that I want to talk about in terms of pivoting is often in these times, we're thinking about the only currency that we have in our market being cash, right? Revenue, dollars. And I'd argue that that's actually not the only kind of currency. The other most important kind of currency is actually relationships. And instead of thinking about financial capital, making the switch to thinking about social capital. And one of the best ways to make it cheaper to run your business and your agency is now is a time to go to your clients who feel like you're leading them and ask them for a referral. Because what they may have is a lot of time on their hands and they have goodwill. And so through the principle of reciprocity, being able to go to them and say, hey, I know things have slowed down for you right now. Do you know someone else that we could help? Because we're a small business too. And we want to be able to put our staff to productive work at this point in time. And nothing would be more valuable to us than you just making an introduction right now. Because we are focused on serving our clients rather than focusing on marketing or selling and finding a brand new client. I'd much rather work with someone, even if they're in a difficult position, that you vouch for. So those are 9 different systems. If you think about the way that we might align them, you start with 1, which is connecting, collecting, contextualizing. That's still not cooperating. Then you learn how to elevate value. Then you pace your expectations, cut costs, defer, ask for the referral, and then look at your offers as well. 9 different ways to be able to respond to this, right? Jamie says, there's a lot of competition for all new business, 100%, which is why referrals are so important right now. You cut through a lot of the noise, basically going through that. So I want to dive into 5 hot principles for you guys to basically take advantage of this and turn these concepts into, essentially a way for you to be able to actually make this happen in your agency. I'm going to quickly jump back to the deck. and we're going to just get that process going. Desktop 1. By the way, that's a quick photo, quick side note over there of when I was December, completely different time. That's Mount Kilimanjaro in the background. And it was a photo that I took with my wife just before heading up that mountain a day later, and we summited, which is kind of cool. Okay, so let's talk about 5 hot principles. The first one is connect with heart. You need to not just connect to check in. You need to connect in a way where it's really a one-to-one human connection, not just because it's on a checklist. The second is collect with confidence. So this is not the time to collect your receivables in a way where you're feeling a little bit like you're not confident, like you're really trying to almost plead for it. That's not it at all. You want to collect with confidence. Control your cash flow. So this means actually like having a plan in place for if this situation happens, we do this in our business. I don't know how many of you have worked on a plan for that, but really like if revenue drops by X%, what are we going to do? One of the things that we look for in our business is what is the labor ratio? So you take all your direct labor, you take your revenue divided by your direct labor, and you get a percentage. When that starts to creep up more than 50% is when you really need to start looking at all the other discretionary elements in your business and start making some cash flow decisions. Number 4 is close the tipping point deals. Being able to do this is really, really important. Now, I've talked to agency owners who are in pretty dire straits, like 80% revenue down right now. We've been working hard on our end. We closed 30K in revenue last week. We closed 30K in revenue this week, and we're going to close another 30K, which is, by the way, our first phase of engagements is around that much. It'll close next week. And this is through a process for being able to follow up and make it easier for the client basically to get started. So close those tipping point deals. Don't focus necessarily on brand new ones that are coming in right now. They're going to take a much longer days to close cycle. But for the ones who are basically on board, having a way for getting to start with them is really, really important. And number 5 is remember those pivoting. Like if there's one thing that's going to increase the longevity of your agency, it's really to figure out how you can contextualize your messages in the market, get your entire team aligned. Number 2 is to get your offers in the market so you can have a smaller sized offer. And then number 3 is being able to get referrals so that you can get brand new clients in the door. So those are our 5 hot principles. I want to go back to the worksheets and show you something that you can basically do to essentially get this process operationalized. And so if you look at the next page, there's a stimulus package checklist. And this package checklist is basically something that we created for going, how do you do a few things? How do you answer this question? How can we be a beacon of hope in our market? Cash, how can we inject cash in our business right now? How can we make it cheaper to run our business? And then finally, how can we position ourselves to thrive? So if you have not done this, what I'm doing and what I think you should do as well, print this out. Don't make this a digital thing. Print it out and have it in front of your desk. Share it with everybody else in your business and go, have we done these things? Because if you're looking for a way to respond to this, this is one of the best ways for being able to do that. We want to do things like this. Have you called every client? Are you doing daily huddles? So some of you have started, you're working remote for the first time, especially if you're in an in-person sort of environment. And so your team can get really disconnected and stop talking to each other. And when communication slows down, so does progress. Host a virtual town hall. That's something like what we're doing right now. We did one of these, by the way. We serve software as a service businesses that are B2B software as a service businesses. We did a town hall on Monday, and we had not only our clients, but a greater community come in as well. We've been receiving tons of positive feedback about a checklist that looks exactly like this. And then involve your entire team. So if you're the founder in the business right now, get your team involved so that they know what your talking points are, and have them start to do Facebook or LinkedIn lives. Remember, this is the one time in history where there's been this many people at home on the web at the same time. They're consuming tons of content. And so reach is at an all-time high when it comes to anything that you're doing from a Facebook Live perspective. So I want to just jump in here. Have any of you been doing these things already? If that's you, just type in me into the chat, and I want to know what you guys are up to. Jamie says 3 and 4. He's doing town halls. He's doing LinkedIn Lives or Facebook Lives. Toby's doing daily huddles. Great. Anything else that you guys have been doing? Calling every client, of course. That's going to be part of your plan. And Matt's got a question. Matt's saying, what percentage of those who we invited came to our town hall? We invited about 80 people to the town hall, and I think about like 45 basically showed up. And our lesson over there, and we're going to be doing an encore, is we did it on a 9 a.m. Eastern on a Monday. And so a bunch of our West Coast folks weren't able to join. And so when we do the encore, we're going to do it at like 2 p.m. Eastern. So a bunch of people on the West Coast can join, as well as people from all around the world. We did, however, have people from all around the world, people who are joining us from Australia at like 2 a.m. in the morning. And it's one of our clients over there. Toby's asking, what's a virtual town hall? A virtual town hall is like this, getting a bunch of people basically together. Unlike a webinar, there's nothing to buy at the end of it. This is simply a way of being able to get a bunch of people together and having Q&A as well. Raf says he's reached out to all the clients, video calls with team members daily, seeing what we can do to add extra value. And Toby says, does this work for potential clients? Yeah, 100%. Remember, we're trying to build social capital right now, not financial capital. And a bunch of those people are reaching out to us and saying, hey, we want to talk to you about your services. Maybe if it's not even a right now thing, what could we do to get started? And so a lot of the conversations that we've actually had in terms of our lead flow came from doing this type of thing. Let's kind of zoom in on the cash section. So if you haven't done this already, make sure you create an at-risk client list so that you're not surprised. It's better to know than to be surprised. Call and collect all your invoices that are over 30 days right now if you've got net 30 terms. We're going to be diving into a way to pause cancellations really soon, so you've got to figure out how to do that. And then I call it these two things over here are really important. Find a way to defer payment terms if that's going to be an objection. So if people are saying, hey, can't pay you. Well, let's split the payment terms. Can't pay you 10 grand right now. Well, let's do 2 payments of 5. Would that be more helpful? And then finally, for some of you, a line of credit might be a way to go. Now, remember, one of the macroeconomic factors that's happening right now is credit is starting to get crunched. So if you don't have a line of credit already, go out and get one. Give the banks your financials. Interest rates are at an all-time low right now. But here's the key tip. When you get your line of credit, maximize it and move it into a different bank account. Because what happened in 2008 was a lot of people who had line of credits in terms of a business line of credit, their credit line was reduced when the financial crisis happened. So what you don't want over there is your credit line to be established and you're thinking it's there as a cushion and then it disappears overnight. That's one prediction that I'm going to be making. I think that in 4 weeks to 6 weeks, this is going to be true. Let's talk about cost. How can you make it cheaper to run your business? So if you have an office right now, can you type in office into the chat? David's got an office, Toby's got an office, Fiona, Jamie. Okay, so I bet your office probably costs you quite a bit and no one's in there right now. So having a way of negotiating landlord rents is important. I've got a script for you. It didn't make it into this particular this worksheet, but if you follow up with me after, I'll share it with you. It's a way to be able to get some rent relief. So you want to do that. That's like one of your biggest non-labor expenses. If you have any loans, go interest only. This is a point where banks are thinking about loans, and it's a good idea to just go in and negotiate it so that it's interest only. And with landlord, by the way, what we're doing is we're basically saying you want rent relief by adding months at the end of whatever your rent term is right now, it's actually good for the landlord, because remember, the landlords are going to be going to the banks as well and asking for relief on their own very large lines of credit. Negotiate your payment terms. So if you have payment terms right now with external suppliers, software companies, whatever that is, and you have to pay them upon receipt, this would be a good time to assign a team member and going, hey, let's actually make it so that we're not doing that. Look at your credit card costs and specifically the things that are coming on your credit card time and time again. So switch from, this is actually the opposite of that. So if you're paying someone by check, could you get an extra 28 to 30 days of grace period by switching it to a credit card? But make that a conscious decision, right? Some of you are having to deal with some very difficult decisions right now related to labor cuts. If that's you, what I implore you to do is only rip off the Band-Aid once. For the people who are, remaining in your office right now, when they see a big cut or layoff basically end up happening, they're always wondering, am I next? And so what we don't want is to surprise them. We have to say, look, we're going to do this one, we're going to cut deep, but once it's done, right? That's really important to do. And then from a confidence-based perspective, create your worst case scenario. Those are those tranches of like, what happens if X happens? What happens if we lose this much revenue? What happens if, our ratios are out of whack? And then fine tune your messaging. We talked about that. And don't stop marketing at this point in time. More than ever, your market needs to hear from you and get your leadership. The way you do that is by leveraging these partner lists and webinars. So a webinar might be something like what we're doing right now. Partner lists are, think about who would be a complementary business right now. Maybe even the business is thriving in this particular environment that you could partner up with and do some co-marketing. This could be as simple as Facebook Live, where you're basically doing it together, very low, setup or involvement, to as deep as like, okay, let's basically do a full webinar, let's do a virtual summit, that kind of thing. Is this helpful at all, by the way? Like this type of like one pager, what to do in especially in this short term, 4 to 8 weeks out? Yeah, okay, so yes, for sure, good idea to think about, super helpful and all in one place. Yeah, so print it out. This is the type of thing that, by the way, some of you are doing lead magnets, this is the type of thing that you want to do, like one pager, super valuable, for free to help your people, right? Second, let's think about your 8 to 16 week, your midterm. Create a State of the Union webinar. This is like what's happening to your market in one place. Start doing some surveys and polls. More than anything, I think this is a really important one. Share customer success stories. Everybody's thinking it's doom and gloom right now, and it's really not true. I reckon that there's businesses who have pivoted and are thriving. Think about restaurants who don't take in, obviously you can't dine in anymore, they're doing takeout. I know of a pizza place here in Toronto who is not just doing takeout, but they're doing meal kits. So they're actually shipping pizza dough with tomato sauce and the whole 9 yards. And they're delivering it through Uber Eats because they can't do delivery themselves. Out of all crisis comes innovation. And if you can step beyond your comfort zone, you could start seeing your clients and customers actually succeeding. Shine a light on them. That's gonna be really, really important. And call and thank customers who stuck with you. Some of them are gonna come in and say, hey, you know what? Like, I don't have cash to pay you right now. And this is really an individual decision, but if you have the ability to really come back to them and say, I know, but we're gonna get through this together. And so let's do it anyway. Because we're not in this for a 1 to 3 month type of relationship. We're in it for years. And so that might be helpful for you. Let's talk through some others. So this is, again, somebody that you should have on your team following up on this. Further out, once you're in a space where you're past the sort of denial and anger and frustration phase, talk to churn clients. Though they need help too. People who you used to work with, who know how awesome it was to work with you. For whatever reason, it may not have been the right time anymore. Now would be a good time to engage with them. Figure out if you can sell some bolt-on products. Could you, if you offer done for you type services right now, could you offer done with you? If you do done with you, could you offer some sort of do it yourself? there's no better time when you have some utilization and capacity on your hands to start operationalizing your knowledge and your processes and finding a way to actually share that with your potential clients as well. So think about, could you start doing a small course, an entry-level offer basically to do this? This is only if you're not super busy right now. Re-engage the dead leads, people who didn't become clients, but also, were people that you spent time talking to in Q4 of 2019 and Q3 of 2019. Offer any sign-on incentives. Then finally, if you're in the US, SBA, and then in Canada, BDC is a funding source. We covered a bunch of these. I want to make time for questions as well. I'm good, by the way, until we're on Eastern time here, 12:30. So I'm happy to stick around and answer questions and get a good conversation basically going. But I'll speed through the rest of this over here. So look at your utilization. This is an interesting one, which is run a recovery challenge. And so we're really experimenting with positioning around things like a stimulus package, a recovery challenge for our clients right now, and people are responding. If you can put the right pieces in place for your clients to think through the process and make it as simple as saying, do this, then do this, then do this other thing over here, they will be eternally grateful. And so some sort of recovery challenge, which has a timely component to it, might be useful, especially in that midterm. Don't forget about your own content. If you're not doing content marketing or investing in your SEO right now, it's probably the lowest impacted channel, because think about it. If there's less people searching right now, that's just demand going down. Doesn't mean the content's bad. It'll come back up. When keyword search volume goes up again, your content's going to be well primed at that point in time. We've been having this discussion a lot internally, which is automating processes. So things that involve more people in your business, really break the business down and look at from client onboarding until client exit, reporting and delivery. What could you be doing to start automating some processes? For us, this is as simple as going, hey, how could we use Zapier better? It's one of the tools we use to automate a bunch of stuff. Well, we should probably be thinking about that, right? Let's get together and have a conversation about it. And then simplify things that take time in your business. Simplify your onboarding, simplify your sales process, reduce renewal friction. So if you have contracts coming up for renewal right now, what could you do so that it's a no-brainer conversation basically for them to have? Okay, so I want to just dive into 3 different outcomes that you can use. So a client check-in process. Who here is a little bit confused about getting your team on the same page about what to say when they're following up with a client? Would it be helpful just to have a few thought starters or conversation starters? Just drop that in the chat. Okay, so Jamie says, sure. Conversation starters would be awesome. So really, let's talk about this. I don't know about you, but in all the calls that I've been on, when it comes down to asking a question about hey, what do you need? Most people are so frazzled that they don't actually even know what they need. And so offer something of that value, right? And Jamie says, I want to be able to do this in a way that we're not being tone deaf. Yeah, so first question, how are you? And they're going to tell you something, but really that's not the truth. Dig deeper. No, really, how are you? How's everybody on the team? Is everybody okay? Maslow's hierarchy of needs states that people aren't thinking about self-actualization right now. They're thinking about survival. And so just being okay is actually a pretty good place to be, especially in the early days of this crisis. And then one common mistake that people often make is that they say, is there anything that I can do to support you? If they're asking that question at all. Well, when you say anything, what ends up happening is the burden of figuring out what support is needed is on not the asker, it's the person being asked. And so instead, just saying, what is one thing that I can do to support you right now? And if they still struggle, say, what's on your to-do list? Yeah, Fiona, actually, thanks for adding this. She says, caution, are you okay can be a bit of a tough question, especially now where no one really is. Yeah, so so I just want to be clear. For the individual, we're saying these questions. And then we're saying everyone on the team, this is a health and safety check-in. Is everybody safe? Is everybody healthy? That's really what we're after over here. And then you're going to start hearing a lot. And so obviously active listening is really, really important over here. Are you okay is of course, no one's okay right now. And so it's important to just understand like what we're after. We want to go survival, safety, is that okay? And then what's the mental status basically like? And really like following up with this, what's one thing that I can do to support you right now? So that's something to try in the client check-in process. Let's go a level deeper, okay? What about some sort of collection dialogue? If you're facing difficulty with how do I go asking for cash at this time when they're worried about their own business? Be doing a bunch of research around this. Probably the best in the business right now is Chris Voss. And so he wrote a book called Never Split the Difference Again. We took some inspiration for that. Here are some things to say. So Chris talks a lot about something called tactical empathy. And so start off with the way that your client may not even be expecting you to share, right? They're thinking about, it's going to be a very me-focused discussion, like, hey, you are overdue, or how are you doing? And then dancing around the topic about how to ask for money. But just dive into it. Like, call out the elephant in the room. If you don't, it's just going to be a conversation that's not going to be very valuable for either party. So we're saying, this is a shit show. You're thinking that talking to me is the last thing to do on your list right now. I know you have 20 more important things to take care of right now. Matt says, Chris Voss's course in Masterclass is worth the price of Masterclass. And Matt, I agree. That's one of the reasons why I bought it. That was my Christmas gift to myself, right? Now so if this is all about the tactical empathy, I'd say this is about saying what's on your mind. So I don't know about you, but we're certainly not in the position at this point in time of thinking about the first place our head goes being, you know what, where could we make some cuts? And then that being our people. Our people are a prize. We worked hard to be able to earn them, to develop that talent. They are the business at the end of the day. And so really just saying what's on your mind, so let's kind of dive in. You know that we only work with a handful of clients, so cash flow is important even when times are great, and we're committed to paying our staff. You're just saying what's on your mind. And then you're getting a no response question, which would be, would it be ridiculous to ask you for your help in settling the outstanding invoices totaling whatever that amount is? And then adding a time frame, today. This opens up the door for you to have a conversation about, well, of course it's not ridiculous. They know that they are a business and you're a business too. So this really kind of transforms from a no to a how. How can we do that? Is this helpful? Like in terms of navigating the conversation about how to go ahead and collect? Yeah, big capital letters. Fiona says, yep, yes. Abdo, I know that this was something that you were definitely looking for. Fiona says, what if you have very large corporate clients? Do you just wait? No, absolutely you don't. You have the same exact conversation with them, because we're talking about people, right? Like it's human to human. It's not about how big they are, how small they are. Yeah. Last one, what to do when a client will ask to pause or cancel. So the way that you're going to see that happen, obviously, is somebody emails you and says, we need to talk, or I need to cancel, or blah, 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 whatever that might be, right? Fiona says, that's the worst. Yes. Stephanie says, one way of collecting is contact the accounts payable department as well, not just your direct contact. Yeah, 100%. We want to have multiple ways or inroads into our clients. So here's what we're doing. So when someone comes in and says, hey, I want to pause or cancel, let's talk about what our response is. It's not, what we want to do is pause the cancellation and get them on the phone. That's our objective. So, we've been knee deep working one-on-one with our clients to develop messaging and response strategies, but I'm going to call you at this time, 9 a.m. tomorrow. You don't defend. You just say, totally hear you and I understand. So they say, hey, look, we're running through a crisis right now. And you, by the way, the pre-frame on this is, do you believe you can actually help them work through this? If the answer is no, then please don't do this. This is not supposed to be used for powers of evil. It's supposed to be if you truly believe that you can help them. But call them, right? And say, totally hear you and I understand. So you're just agreeing. We can talk about our work together later. Right now, let's just figure out a plan for helping you get through this. Are you free at 9 a.m. tomorrow? And so what we're doing is we're pausing. There's two conversations to have over here. We're pausing the cancellation conversation. And what we're doing is really enabling the let's brainstorm ways to get you through this conversation. And that's exactly how you can be a hero to your clients. So those are 3 things to actually do in addition to the stimulus package checklist. Last thing I want to cover, and then I want to open up for questions, is this. So I want to talk to you about Outlook. This is how you'll be remembered through this whole thing, okay? So there's a bunch of people who are going to respond in this way. They will lose clients because what they believe is that we're at the end of the world and that's going to happen immediately. And so they will feel a little lost because they're losing not only business, but they just don't know where to go with this. And their client conversations will feel like you're trying to rescue, the client. So that's what the client's thinking when you contact them. There's a second category over here of people who are thinking that, you know what, time will pass on. It's not the end of the world, but it might be later. Like the other shoe hasn't dropped yet. So those people are probably going to be thinking that, they're not in control. They're going to be victims of what's going on. And I think their clients will basically think that they are just being served through this crisis. So the client tells you what they need right now, you respond to their needs, and that's that. But if you believe that, you know what, the world is going to reset for growth, maybe it's not going to be a right now thing, it'll happen later. I think that those people are really they're going to fight, right? They're the fighters basically in this chart. And their clients, those agencies, clients will feel like the agency helped them through this crisis. And then there's a final one. And my hope is that everybody on this, and if you're watching this later, like type in replay so I know where you showed up and where you watched this. They're going to show up as leaders, not just fighters, but as leaders. And their clients are not going to just feel helped. They're going to feel guided. So I think that's a choice now. Like, which one of these boxes are you feeling right now, and where do you choose to go in terms of being fear-focused, being unfocused, or being strategy-focused, so that you can lead and basically end up in a position where, as we emerge out of this, and we will get through this just by the simple passing of time, that your clients feel like you guided them through this. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, and as well as your advice on what are you doing differently that's working for you right now to be able to survive and thrive through this. Drop that in the chat. What are some of the big things that you still feel like you need a little bit of help with, or that you would like to discuss? And I'll call it out, and I might even bring you on if you want to talk through it. So drop a question into the chat as we walk through this. And open it up for community Q&A. Yeah, Matt said, we're turning out live in-person training programs into online courses. Yeah, I think that's hugely valuable. And that would be a function of taking your model from in-person to virtual. Fiona says, this was great. Thanks so much. Have to head to a client meeting. Thank you for joining, and good luck with your client meeting. Anything else that's like a burning question that we might be able to address? Yeah. Jamie says he's struggling with the pause, especially when our contact is taking directive from above. Jamie, can you empathize with them? So in addition to saying that I know it's a shit show, just to say, like, I know you're trying to do the best that you can right now, and that you probably feel horrible having these conversations with not just us, but other agencies that you work with as well. let them kind of level with you and open the door to whoever it is that's giving them that directive. One of the things, this is a big lesson of coming out of this crisis as well, is just how can you have multiple relationships with your client, not just your main point of contact, but people who are, their managers and even their managers' managers. If you can't make it happen with this particular client, how could you put a system in place so that you've got those director, VP, C-level relationships? Daniel says, our team of interns and co-ops are still eager to join the team this spring. They will be completely virtual, but any creative ways to get them involved? Yeah, and keep them busy since client work will be slowing down. So great question about that. If you're getting more people on board, and especially if your onboarding process is very in person right now, like literally, learning through osmosis, what you really want to do is basically create some sort of online onboarding. A good way of doing this might be some sort of course, basically, your first day at your agency, and here's what you need to know. Here are the projects basically that you want to, jump into. That might be something for you to think about. See a few other questions. Matt's asking, how else are others reaching out or serving their clients differently? Like, let's talk about that pivot. It is other ways that you're pivoting to serve your clients other than going from in-person to virtual. Darko says, can you possibly share some digital marketing tactics you are using on current clients to help them through the crisis? Yeah, I'm happy to. Give me 1 second to just get the iPad going again. For some reason it froze. Okay, so here's what we're doing from a digital marketing perspective. So 3 things to kind of focus on. The first pillar is really their messaging. Then we're looking at their budgeting. And then finally, the targeting. So the shifts that we're making over here are, rather than messaging being productivity or revenue gain focused, we're really shifting the messaging so that it's more apt with the market. So rather than a revenue profile, for example, moving to how to control risk at a time like this. Instead of how, that just shows them how they can go from being reactive to responsive. From a budgeting perspective, what we're really doing is keeping bottom of funnel remarketing campaigns, SEO alive, just like usual. But what we're doing is, if there are some experiments, any sort of branded stuff that's happening, we're really moving those budgets, and what we're really moving them to is some bottom of funnel plus remarketing. And then in terms of targeting, what we're doing is really making the shift between more narrow type of targeting to more broad. Like, just remember that there's a lot of people right now who are not in a buying mindset. So this is the best time, really the goal being that how can we get the biggest possible audience pool? Because, I don't know about what you guys are seeing right now, but we're seeing the cost of acquisition being the lowest that's ever been. Like, this is like 2008, 2009 kind of levels. Okay, so he says, thank you. All right, cool. Anything else that's coming up for you guys that we should chat about in terms of client response, pivoting strategies, et cetera, ways to collect cash that might be helpful and where we can be of service? Okay. Jamie, you raise your hand. I'm not monitoring the hand stuff. Can you just put it in the chat, and we'll, there you go. Jay saying, applying for a loan with BDC. They are apparently expressing loans for under $100,000. What are your overall thoughts on getting a loan? Get more than you think you need, or or should you be thinking get as much capital on hand, not only to make sure the business thrives, but you can take advantage when the market bottoms out? Yeah, I would absolutely say that if you can think about where the labor markets and the credit market is basically going right now, it will get crunched. And so if I'm thinking about loans, I'm definitely thinking about how can we possibly get as much money as possible, because remember that if you have the capital on hand, the cost of the loan is actually pretty low at this point in time. The Fed just dropped another 25 basis points last night. That's as of March 27th when we're recording this. Okay, so yeah, so Jamie says, could you please review cost to labor ratio again? Yeah, it's a great question. So we want to look at what we call salary load. And the salary load is simply, you look at every single person in the business and you take your revenue divided by your direct labor costs. Whatever that percentage is over here, let me just kind of show you some target ranges. 35% is fantastic. 45 is kind of an orange zone. 55% is danger zone. And so that's where you know that you're effectively reducing revenue at a much faster rate than you are controlling cost. And that's where you might want to make some tough decisions about how you can keep it within the salary, the right ranges, basically. Is that helpful, Jamie? Cami asks, you mentioned to email a template to negotiate rent. Can you share it? I don't have it right here in front of me, Cami, but if you follow up with me after, I will share it with you. I know we're connected on Facebook. Abdo says, this was awesome. You've answered all the questions I had on my mind. Awesome. Darko asks, for clients who have problems making payments, are you guys cutting or stopping back work on their accounts and letting them know? Yes, let's talk a little bit about work stoppage plans. That's really, really important in terms of being able to figure out what that might be. So you definitely need a work stoppage plan. So if you think about days of crisis, right? And so you're like day 0, day 7, day 14, day 28. The longer this goes on, the worse it'll be in terms of your ability to collect. And so be really, really clear on when you can end up getting the cash. More payments more often is better. And so really saying, can we get a lump sum on day 0 and then start getting more every single week just to be able to do that properly. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure that you have a collection plan. And if there's a percentage outstanding, so let's suppose that right now this is a 100% outstanding and the goal is to get to 0% outstanding. Understand that as time goes on, if this does not move in that direction, there's going to be a line where you're going to stop work. Does that make sense? Raf, Matt, thanks for attending. Okay, so let's see. David's got a question about, can you give a few examples on how you've been changing messaging from revenue generating to managing risk? Curious to have a brainstorm on that and ways to serve the community with that message. Yeah, so we're actually publishing a blog post next week with some concrete examples of this. Let me just see if I can show you some ways to think about that. So first thing to think about is, if you think about what most of your customers are selling, if you're B2B, and that's like the context that we operate in, you're either selling like, we make you more money, and so we make you more revenue, or we help you control your costs and make you more efficient, right? So those are the two value props that people may be thinking about. And so if you think about this from a quiz perspective, let's suppose that would be the medium. And the question is, what's your revenue profile? And that might be a quiz effectively for like, how much more money could you make if you dialed in your stuff, right? Just changing that, and because no one's thinking about, you know, understanding what their revenue profile is, they know it's pretty crappy right now. Just changing that to what is your risk profile. And so if I took the elements over here and said, hey, could I turn these into questions in a quiz and create a grader for agencies? If you don't have these things in place, then your risk profile of going out of business are pretty high. Versus, you know, a revenue profile, I obviously wouldn't have talked about costs. I'd only be talking about connection, cash, and confidence. And that would be the difference in messaging between, you know, before and where we are right now. You really want to lean into the conversation that the market is having today. Does that make sense? Okay, thumbs up. Okay, Abdo says, one more. Would you encourage keeping all your staff but reducing their hours from 5 days a week to 4 days a week to maintain your staff? If you get to that juncture, then yes. And in Canada, there are employment insurance top-up programs for that. I don't know what the situation is like in the States, but you could definitely keep them. Most governments, by the way, want employers to keep employees engaged and not lay them off. So a lot of the assistance programs right now are all about how do we make it so that employers don't have to lay off and we can help them weather the storm, like share some of the burden essentially. And so if you pay for 4 weeks and they top up the extra day, that's one way of being able to retain your staff. You work really hard to get them, and for the government to be able to help do that as well. Does that make sense, Abdo? And then Jay's got a question here, and then I think we'll finish up just to respect everybody's time. Jay says, sorry, asking again regarding referrals. You mentioned this earlier, but any chance you could rephrase or reshare your rough script and frame it for asking clients to refer? Yeah. Is it okay if I kind of do this on the fly? Because it's not lit up over here. So first thing that you want to look at is, why didn't it share? Just have a quick look. Presentation. My iPad sharing stopped for a second, so I'm just going to reshare it. Because you want to ask yourself the question, where are our clients at right now in our relationship with them? If you ask somebody for a referral when they don't feel like you are leading them, your chances of getting that referral really blow up. And so we don't want that. And so ask yourself with every single client, are they feeling like you're going to have a rescuing conversation with them? Do they just feel kind of server responder? Do they feel like you're serving them? Do they feel like you've just helped them? Or do they feel like you're guiding them? And so if you focus on the folks that you know you've either helped or guided, those would be the ones that are essentially like above the line, essentially. And these are referral grade people to speak with. So I would dive in with something like the collection dialogue. So you'd say, hey, Bob, look, this is a complete shit show. I know talking to me is the last thing that you want right now. And I just wanted to thank you for the support that you provided over the years. We've really enjoyed the work that we've done together. And I know that we're going to get through this as well. I have one small favor to ask of you, because I know that the last time we connected, you told us that things are going along well, and that even though you're feeling like there's a ton on your plate, that we're doing our part and we're either helping or even going above and beyond that. Did I get that right? You let them say, yes, you got that right. What's up? It's typically how a person would respond if you say, can you do me a favor? Just say, hey, look, we are having to make a hard choice. The hard choice is, do we continue trying to market and sell to acquire brand new clients? And we're doing that because we're committed to paying our staff and taking care of them. It's the hardest on them, frankly, at this time. I know it's hard on you and me as business owners, but it's even harder on our staff. So I want to protect our staff. And that means that we're in this decision between either trying to market and sell or find other ways of being able to survive and thrive through this time. So here's my ask of you. Since you're already saying that you're happy, you like the work that we're doing, and it's valuable to you, would you mind introducing me to 3 people who are in the exact same situation that you're in right now, and so that we can help guide them through this crisis as well? Would that be ridiculous? Or would that be okay? Like, you just kind of obviously feel it with your client, and let them respond, because generally speaking, most people are not asking for referrals right now, and they're only thinking in one kind of currency, which is money. I think that you really should be looking at the ability to have other kinds of capital, like social capital. So does that kind of help, Jay? Jamie says, gotta run. Thank you for time. Incredibly helpful. Yeah, so that. Okay, so Jay, thanks for that last question. We are going to wrap up. I hope this has been helpful for you guys, that you'll use some of these strategies. I think it's really darn important that we as agencies band together and get through this crisis. I have no ask of you other than do this right now. There's nothing to buy. If you'd like some more help in terms of knowing how to actually implement this in your business, shoot me a note, dev@poweredbysearch.com, and we'll chat. And if you would be so inclined, one of the things that I think is really difficult right now is it's not really for us, it's for other people. And so I live in Toronto, and I know you might be from a different part of the world right now, but our homeless in Toronto are having a really hard time because a lot of the shelters are closed. We've personally made some donations. If you'd feel so inclined, and no pressure at all, and feel free to say no, but if that's something that you'd like to do to help because this has been valuable for you, shoot me a note. I'd love for you to connect with a shelter called the Yellow Door Shelter here in Toronto, and love that support. All right, well, thank you guys very, very much for joining. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll talk to you real soon. All right, cheers.